Good day, everybody. Andrew Silva here again. Um, Today we'll be continuing our series on the circulatory system, and we're gonna be drawing our inspiration, our directives from the Human Social Biology syllabus, C6 syllabus. We're still in section B, life processes, and we're gonna be dealing with the specific learning objective 3.8, which says to relate the structures of arteries, veins, capillaries to their functions. Relate the structures of arteries, veins, and capillaries to their functions. All right. Here I have drawn a few diagrams that we're gonna use as illustrations so we can follow more clearly. First, we begin by saying that the direction of flow of blood through our body is from our arteries to our arterioles, through our capillaries to our venules, and finally our veins. So that's the direction of flow. As the blood leaves the heart, it enters the arteries, then it flows to the arterioles, capillaries, venules, and finally veins. The direction of blood is generally the same. In the arteries, blood flow away from the heart if the arteries are far away. So as blood leaves the heart, flows away from the heart, it passes through arteries. In veins, blood flows towards the heart. So as blood goes throughout our body and as it returns to our heart, it returns to our heart via our veins. So veins return blood towards our heart. And capillaries, which are very tiny things, they carry blood to every cell in our body. We have trillions upon trillions of cells in our body, and each and every cell requires nutrients. And it's the function of the capillary to be so close, touching, and in close proximity to every cell so that every cell can get the nutrients, right? In the arteries, there tend to be oxygenated blood, all right, oxyhemoglobin. So blood in the arteries tend to be oxygenated. There's one exception, of course, and that's the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood. That's the exception to the rule. And that's because it's taking blood from the heart that has just returned from the body and carrying it to the lungs. Anytime you hear the word pulmonary, you think of the lungs. So the pulmonary artery is taking blood from the heart and carrying it to the lungs. And the blood that's coming from the heart to the lungs has just returned from the body, so it's deoxygenated. Right? Blood in veins tend to be deoxygenated because, like I just said, they're returning from the rest of the body where they just released the oxygen, and with the exception, of course, of the pulmonary vein. The pulmonary vein is returning to the heart from the lungs, and in the lungs, the blood would have taken up all the oxygen. So the blood in the pulmonary vein is oxygenated blood. Now, that's an exception to the rule of deoxygenated blood in the veins. And in the capillaries, blood tends to be rich in oxygen and nutrients and other things that are needed for the body, hormones and the like. All right. Let's turn our attention to the diagram and let's look at the structure. The first thing I'd like us to look at is the walls. All right, we have 3 layers of walls here. We have the fibrous layer, muscular layer, and endothelial layer. That's the same over here. Fibrous layer, muscular layer, endothelial layer. What I like it, well, you should remember and be able to label these layers. The muscular layer would allow the arteries in particular to constrict, yes. And I get smaller, make the lumen smaller. We're going to talk about that in a bit. I like also for us to notice that the walls in the arteries are thicker than the walls in the veins. And this is because the arteries are under pressure. The blood flowing through the arteries are under pressure. They just left the heart. The heart is squeezing blood through the body, and they're under great pressure, especially the aorta, which is the main artery leading out from the heart. So they need to be able to maintain this or withstand this high pressure, and so they have thicker walls. All right, pressure bus pipe, and veins, arteries, blood vessels can be thought of as pipes. Okay, and so the thicker the walls, the more they're able to sustain or maintain the high pressure and not burst because of it. Veins, on the other hand, their walls are thinner. They do not need the thick walls because the blood flowing through the veins are not under high pressure. Now, the high pressure in the arteries is what propels the blood throughout the body, right? And because there's no high pressure in the veins, there's another mechanism by which blood is propelled to the veins, and we're gonna look at that in a bit. Suffice it to say, blood in the arteries under high pressure, therefore they need thick walls. Blood in the veins not under high pressure, therefore there's no need for thick walls. Another point that I like us to note is the lumen, all right, the size of the lumen. In the veins, the size is large, and in the arteries, sorry, the size is small. The capillaries are even smaller than that. The lumen is the hole, right? So if you're looking down a hose, the hole in there through which the water would flow, that's the lumen. If you're looking through a straw for whatever reason, the hole in there that would you suck up juice or whatever liquid you're drinking, that hole is the lumen. All right. In arteries, the lumen is very small, and the reason why the lumen is very small is so that it can maintain high pressure. The smaller the lumen, the higher the pressure. Okay. And because, like I said, veins are not under any sort of pressure, the blood in veins are not under any sort of pressure, the lumen does not need to be as small. It is large, right? A large lumen. And finally, we have the capillaries here. The capillaries have the tiniest of lumens. The lumens in the hole, the space there in the capillaries are very small. So small that red blood cells pass through them single file, all right? And we know how small a red blood cell is. It's tinier than the head of a needle, a pin, all right? To give you perspective, there are 5 million red blood cells in one single drop of blood. That's how small a red blood cell is. I'd also like to come back and note that the walls of the capillaries are 1 cell thick, all right? And this is it to facilitate diffusion, right? Diffusion is one of the 3 processes by which particles move within the body, within the cells. And to facilitate that movement, that passive movement of diffusion, the capillaries are 1 cell thick, right? Another structure that is found in veins is that of the valves, right? Veins are valves. I just mentioned that arteries maintain high pressure. The blood in them is under high pressure, and that's what propels the blood to the body. But there's no pressure in the veins. And so the way that blood moves in the veins is through muscle contraction, right? When we walk, when we move, the muscles squeeze the veins. If I go back a little bit, arteries tend to be deeper in the body, and veins tend to be on the surface. Right? And on the surface, they can be compressed by muscle. Right? So when we move and contract our muscles, they squeeze against the veins, forcing blood through them. And so this squeezing does not discriminate in terms of direction. Right? When you squeeze a balloon, the air goes in every direction. What we need in our body for the blood to go in one direction, that's towards the heart and the veins. And so to do this, veins have an added structure, added feature of valves. So within the veins, there are valves, and these valves only allow flow in one direction. When the blood is flowing towards the heart, the valves open, there's free flow of blood. If for some reason the blood tries to go back, whether by gravity or some other force, the valves will close, preventing the blood from going back. All right, so that combination of muscle contraction and the valve system is what propels blood through the veins. Right, at this time I could even speak about varicose veins. Varicose veins are veins that the valves are now damaged or worn out or degraded for whatever reason, and so blood actually flows back. So as the blood tries to flow back, the valves cannot properly close, and it's allowed to pass back, and those manifest in those bulging spider quote unquote veins or varicose veins that we can have tend to have at the back of our feet and so of our legs, behind our knees and things like that. Right, so that those are varicose veins. And also, before I end, like to talk a little bit about the arterioles. And I mentioned that the muscular layer, those are present in the arterioles as well as the arteries and veins, and they allow the blood vessels to restrict blood flow through them. And this is helpful, especially in homeostasis when it comes to temperature control. When we get too hot, we want to cool down, and to do that, one of the mechanisms that our body utilizes is by redirecting the blood to our skin. So in a situation where we are too hot and we need to cool down, the arterioles in particular, arteries as well, would constrict, squeeze using the muscular layer, the blood vessels inside our body and open up the blood vessels closer to our skin, dilate, so that more blood will flow to the skin. And as it flows to the skin, heat is given off. All right. And the opposite is true, the converse is true in that if it's too cold, we don't want any blood going to our skin, so we could lose that heat and get hypothermia. So if it's too cold, the blood vessels close to our skin will constrict, reducing blood flow to our skin so that we lose less heat. All right, in that way. So this in a nutshell is what we need to know for learning outcome 3.8. At this time, let me give you a recap and then we'll look at some questions.